All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this much anticipated public lecture at Roger Williams University School of Architecture, Art, and Historic Preservation. I'm Nathan Fash, Assistant Professor of Architecture and co-chair of the events committee along with Andrew Cohen. And tonight I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker, Bart Mispelblom. But before I do that, I just want to make my usual logistical note about the format by saying that everyone in the audience can please feel free to use the question and answer button at the bottom of the Zoom window. Submit questions either during or after the talk. And I'll pick these up at the end and read them to our guests so you can have a chance to respond to them. Also, we've had really good luck with the internet in the past, but if for whatever reason that's not the case today, please just be patient and log back on. Our speaker is joining us from the Netherlands, so I have my fingers crossed. And then finally, our event today is being recorded. So if you missed some of it or want to share it or see it again, it'll be available, as I just said, on the events webpage on the Roger Williams website. I also want to say a special word of thanks to Bill McQueen and to our Dean, Steve White, who were instrumental in helping to bring our guest to be with us today. So now on to our guest, Bart Mispelblom. Studied architectural and urban design at TU Delft in the Netherlands. And for our audience, that's the oldest and largest Dutch public technological university. Together with Charlotte ten Dijk, he's founder and owner of Tangram Architecture and Urban Landscape. The focus of their work, as we'll hear much more about today, is at the leading edge of design that combines high density, mixed use, and sustainability. Their work cited primarily in the Netherlands, but through their work, they actively are trying to answer the question, what is the right balance between built and unbuilt? And some of the recent projects like Crystal Court in Amsterdam, CT in Rotterdam, and Rhapsody in West in Amsterdam are excellent examples of the synthesis of these strands of thinking. Tangram has won several prestigious awards, including the Europan Housing Competition, the BNA Building of the Year Award, the Amsterdam New Building Prize, the SKG Award for Excellent Urban Development, and the Guden AAP. Apart from the actual design and building, Tangram also does research for municipalities and central government of the Netherlands, as well as for its own development purposes. Recently, the City of the Future was published, which is a study of future spatial policies and design recipes for the Dutch built environment, which was commissioned by the Ministries of Infrastructure and Environment. In 2010, Tangram was co-author of Splendid Compact NL, filled with design strategies for intelligent intensification of Dutch cities. And that book was commissioned by the Minister of Housing, Spatial Organization and Environment. Bart regularly lectures at universities and was a visiting professor of architecture at our very own Roger Williams University between 2011 and 2013, where he worked primarily on the central theme of sustainable density. So with that, we're very pleased and excited to welcome back to our school in this virtual format, Bart Mispelblom. So please join me in a very warm and collective welcome.
Nathan, thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'm really sorry that I cannot be there with you all because I will miss the interaction and question marks on the faces when I say something that nobody understands. So feel free, Nathan, to intervene if necessary, if you think it's not pretty clear what we are doing. I cut my lecture in a few parts. If people want to, we could make a break, but as far as I'm concerned, I go ahead throughout the whole hour. So, but give me a sign if you think otherwise. Today I'm addressing the future focus for city design. I think here are a few of the most important assignments for the students' professional careers in the nearby future. It's comprehensive and difficult, so that's why we need intelligent solutions. Equity and justice, Nathan, was on your menu for today, and it will be there in my story. It's really important, but there's so much more, and I'll explain that as much as I can, of course, in the boundaries of from only 1 hour. First, of course, you introduced me a little bit. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it works. I have to do it like this. Okay. Who's Tangram? Who are we to talk about all this? So, as you told me, we design and build all kinds of scales and scale levels, and residential, utility, and mixed functions. And it's both on urban design, architectural design, and the urban landscape in between. And we do this deliberately because we think the best solutions for architecture can be found on the threshold, on the overlap of architectural and urban design. That's where it happens, not in the color of your facade. Apart from the building and designing, we do a lot of research, and of course we tell about it in the educational programs, and we do publications. But this tendency to do the research and to dive deeper into the theories of everything explains why I will tell the story that I'm going to tell you. Pick out a few publications that are really relevant and that people can find back on our website. That relevant, I mean relevant for my story today. It's up to you if you think it's relevant at all. But the City of the Future, that's the one that you were already mentioning. It's pretty new. It's released a year ago about new strategies of urban planning and designing. And earlier, the Prachtig Compact Nederland, as it's called in Dutch, and it was translated into Splendid Compact NL. I'm still not sure if it's really good English. There we tried to go a little bit deeper into the detail and gave a lot of practical design recipes for intelligent intensification, and many of which I will show today again, showing other projects. Let me start at the big picture. Worldwide, we are facing a new crowd of people going from 7 to 10 billion, which is 3 billion in nearly 20-25 years, comes up to 1 million per week. That's really a lot. And all these people need, we moeten even zoomen, ik weet het niet zoomen. Ik ben al mijn teksten kwijt. Sorry, Nathan. Ja. Kan je even vragen? All these people need houses, houses, roads, schools, fresh air. So the world is getting fuller and fuller, and you can ask where to go with all our provisions. The Netherlands is a pretty small country. That's why we're working here, because we have this problem maybe even stronger than many other countries in the world. The Netherlands is the fourth and heavily populated country, and still our population will rise by about 20% in the next 20 years. I need a little assistance. Kunnen we die teksten terughalen aan de rechterkant? Maybe we have focused a little bit too strong. Nu is het wel goed. Ja, oké. Oh, maar Nathan zegt dat. Doe dat maar weer. I'm sorry, folks. We have a little technical issue here. Ja.
Hij moet ergens
Naar links helemaal. Daar. Oké. Thank you. Was ik hier? Ja. Sorry for all the Dutch. And my question was, where will we go with all these people? Long time we thought of sprawling all the activity was the right solution. But if you talk about social inclusion, this is really a problem, because living apart from like this in a sprawled environment, there's enormous strong dependency on your car, and many people with lower incomes have too far distance to economic activity. So they have to live in the city, and they have to live in a qualitatively higher way than they do now. So we need improvement there. Furthermore, all the sprawl means inefficient infrastructures. We create extra unnecessary traffic jams. And maybe the most important of all, we use too much valuable land, and there are so many other claims for the land. We need more and more local forestry and local food cultivation. I think the coronavirus has taught us that we are dealing with the problem getting everything from everywhere. So local production is back on the card again. Then we are struggling with problems of with water, the sea, the rivers, stormwater management in the Netherlands, especially because we're a low country below sea level. We need more and more space for our dikes to keep the rivers in place and to get the sea out of our country. On the other hand, if I look at Miami, for example, where I've been for a long time, it's flooding more and more, and there's the same problem. So then we have to think about the ecological side of the planet Earth, and the connection of ecological zones is really important. So we cannot build everywhere. And local energy production is another thing. We have been too dependent on fossil fuels from parts of the world that you better cannot be dependent of. So this is all on the agenda. We need our valuable land for other things. So then you would say, okay, let's densify the cities, and we're there. But of course, there are so many real bad examples. And the question right now is, can we do that better? But this is not all. We're in a time that people get aware of the big transitions that are coming over us, and maybe they're slow and invisible, like the bottom of the iceberg, but they are there, like climate change, like the need for energy. We have to go from energy consumption to energy production in the right way. Our demography is changing all the time, and it's not only in the Netherlands, but of course in the United States as well, and everywhere in the world. We have big shifts of populations going from one country to the other, creating problems, but we have to solve these problems. So we have to find a way to give this a place in our planning and in our designs. But then, as we are at a design school right now, I think it's time to express that beauty is important, and I'm not the only one to say this. You see here a quote of Roger Scruton. He's a philosopher who died just 1 year ago. Just after he finished a report which is called Living with Beauty, and it was written for the British government on future planning in Britain of their cities. And he says, beauty is vanishing from our world because we live as though it doesn't matter. That's really bad to hear. He comes up with 3 advices. And he said, ask for beauty, refuse ugliness, and promote stewardship. And that's something, there's a direct link with social inclusion. I get back on this one. You could say beauty is not a cost that you can negotiate away. It promotes healthy and happy life. So it has its revenues as well. And on the other hand, ugliness has enormous social costs, and it destroys the sense of place and undermines the spirit of the community. So it has enormous backlashes. There is really, not only for social matters, but also for economic measures, there is really a need for beauty. I throw in another great philosopher, Immanuel Kant, who says it's about the aesthetics of the end product, but also about the process leading there. And that's really important, because then to have a process leading there that's beautiful, you need social inclusion. So I see the links here between aesthetics and a good process. Good. So the planner's agenda, as far as I'm concerned, should be handle an exponential demand of new housing and everything, because that's a given fact. Consider the ongoing transitions that are hardly considered in our daily urban circus of the politics, and strive for beauty in product, both in product and in process. So this is what we mean if we say we have to find good solutions for high quality densification. Here is my agenda for today. I'm going to speak in 3 chapters, in 3 parts. So I will show some specific design solutions. For example, how you can make sites that before were labeled as unsuitable for everything and for residential building, how you can make them suitable. So this means that many plots that we overlook at the moment inside the existing cities might be the ones that are going to build in the future. Then we have these new demands that I was already talking about, and this is a first part. How can you translate this in a design? Then in part 2, I was talking about involvement of the neighborhood and local stakeholders. So about bottom up, top down, how can you plan and build and take local residents already living there around it or in the neighborhood with you in your plan instead of getting them so far that they will do procedures against you. And thirdly, and that's an old hobby horse of mine, it's about the integration of buildings and their internal public space, the principle of Ma, because in this internal space, that's the place where social contact takes place. It's super important for the functioning of buildings and the city. So, part 1, the design solutions and new demands. And I will illustrate it with our latest finished buildings. Bill has visited it when it was on his way getting built. It's Rhapsody in West, on a real complex location in a real bad neighborhood when we started there. It's about 240 residential units, a few amenities coming along with it. It has its own built parking. It's total in square feet, about 300,000 square feet. So it's immediate building as the size is concerned. I show this because I'm really proud to show that we had prices on both the social impact and on the looks of this building. Not to boast too much, I like to do it, but I think it shows that it is possible to do both, and that's exactly what I think designers should strive for. On Rhapsody in West, of course, it has a specific name, as this is really more than a name, because this Boston Lomer co-located neighborhood needed new music. It was a disaster. Literally, for those who do not know, a rhapsody is a piece of music that has no formal structure, but still the elements fit well together, and it expresses powerful feelings. Exactly what Rhapsody does. Here you see the location. Do you see my mouse here? I don't see it myself here. In the center of Amsterdam. Can you see it, Nathan? Yeah, okay. So as you can see, there is a terrific highway around the center of Amsterdam, the A10, that's the name, and the location, the site of Rhapsody is at the wrong side of it. So this location tended to go into depreciation. All the emphasis of the newly built parts of Amsterdam were within the center and not without it. So you see here the building site. You see here the A10 highway, and this is the center part, and this is the old neighborhood, as it's called, the Kolekit neighborhood. The Kolekit is a Dutch word, of course, but this is the church that has a nickname, Kolekit, and which is a really nice piece of architecture of the architect Duintje, but it's something else. And here you see our building site, a little bit less than a football field big, 2 acres. This building site had some specifics. To start with, it was really noisy, and there's a lot of dust going from this heavily crowded A10 highway. So this site has been empty, I think, for 50 years or so. Nobody dared to start anything because you cannot hear each other when standing there. So in special real estate, developers walked around it and didn't do anything with it. So the question was this unsuitable for residential building? And it was a question asked by the municipality of Amsterdam. As you can see, there is some specific quality, or call it a quality, but some specific, and that's that we had a highway exit here, and it meant the height difference between this road and this green field there. And exactly there lies a part of the solution of this design. Furthermore, this co-located neighborhood is a part of the Amsterdam expansion program, Amsterdam's uitbreidingsplan from the famous Cornelis van Eesteren. And Cornelis van Eesteren, the real Corbusier addict, I would say, has a holy status in the Netherlands. So when starting here, everybody was looking really tight what we were going to do here. Most people thought you simply have to copy paste the rest of the blocks and then it's okay, but that was not possible as far as we were concerned. At the right you see a photo of the AUP. It's from the 50s when it was built. All relatively small houses, not adequate anymore for the demands of this time, but okay, they were there. When starting a project like this in the Netherlands, you always get a predestined building envelope. Some urban designer of the municipality comes up with something like this, which is completely crazy, because why this and not a little bit else? But doing a contest, and it was a contest, you have to be exactly within these borders, otherwise you will be disqualified. The funny thing is that the guy who made this envelope forgot to write down where this 20 and 29 meters were measured. So we decided to do the best for us and to measure it from the side of the highway where we have a 5 meters lifted street. So we already gained 5 meters here. So we could bring in the program a little bit easier. Here you see the issues we had to deal with. So there was this noise and dust pollution. 10 years before we came, these two buildings were built over the highway, and they're completely out of scale and of a very poor architecture. Then from an urban point of view, there's an enormous discontinuity between the inner side of the city and this neighborhood. So everything we would build there would be better. We have this enormous uniformity in the existing housing typology. And there is a lot of green, but it's not as accessible for anybody. In fact, there's a lot of space in the streets, but there is no place to sit, because this is what I think the poorness of this urban design. What could we do with it on this a little bit more than 8,000 square meters? These were the targets we want to meet with. And some of them were given to us by the municipality. They were, for a start, the starting point of an energy delivery quotient of 0. This means literally that the building is not going to use any energy, which is, or it gains as much as it uses. That's an expensive thing to do for a building that has to be placed in a real poor neighborhood where you want to attract people to go to. So, but we wanted to win the contest, and we decided to put it below 0. And at the end, I will show you we reached that goal. Then we had to shield the living quality from this A10 and from the also very noisy Bos en Lommerweg. That's going from east to west here. The municipality demanded not to make any gallery housing types, which I completely agree with, because it's a really poor quality. So okay, but that means you need sort of portico system. They demanded a vivid plinth in the functions of the street everywhere. We took as a starting point that we might make a building here, but we wanted to have public routes over the private side because it was going to be a private site for a real estate investor. We wanted to make it a real part of the city. So I'll get back to that. So and we had the color kit, which is a real nice thing, and we thought it could be a strong reference for our architecture. This is a little sketch that's made in 10 minutes, but it's exactly what it says what it is. At the right side, you see the road, highway A10 with noise and pollution and dust, etc. But we have this 5-meter high difference. So what we in fact did was creating a platform, bringing it higher and higher, and bending it over and make it a real inaccessible wall, thus creating a completely different atmosphere at the other side, where we made real water, plants, trees, etc. So we create an atmosphere of housing. And this is also the level of the bridge going from the east to the west, from the center to the neighborhood. So people tend right now to go via this road to the neighborhood. What we gained is the enormous storage room for the bad functions like parking, bicycles, small storage room, technique, etc. It was a sort of a present. And so without making a garage, we could hide all the parking underneath this concept. Here you see the enormous contrast between the noisy side and the friendly side. The noisy side is not only traffic, but there's also a demand, an official demand, that it should be able to tackle a real explosion with engine fuel. So this is really a wall. Pretty close, but we made holes in it to make the building friendly at night, but especially to have a splendid view from the living rooms towards the street without any noise. These are really closed windows, but the other side is open as can be and has the, let's say, the oasis, green oasis in the city character. I'll explain how we get to this image. So we had to tackle this noise, and we started up making a real strong back building, which is one-sided. So you live at the west side, and the other side that I just show you is pretty close. The same kind of effect for the side of the Bos en Lommerweg, with one difference. This is a vivid urban street, so people have to live at this side as well, which brings us a really special facade. I'll show you later. This is the start. A green oasis, the deck on 5 meters on the level of the bridge there, and 5 meters above the street level of the neighborhood. Of course, that's not where you can end with. So what we did is creating large holes in it where you can enter with very lazy staircases the green oasis, because one of the main goals was to get everybody in there, everybody from the whole neighborhood to sit there and enjoy the green park-like atmosphere. And then, of course, we had this, I forgot to mention, we had the obligation to create 30,000 square meters of program. And that means you really have to make it, otherwise you cannot afford the whole thing. And it's really dense. It has an FSI of more than 4. I think you know floor space index. So that's a lot. My office here in Eiburg have an SFI, the whole Eiburg of 1, so it's 4 times Eiburg. So we needed to make program of course, at the side of the neighborhood. But if you want to make people at the backbone building happy, you cannot make a closed block here. So we decided to make open blocks and to give them specific forms. So these are separated apartment buildings, and this is one big wall. This is in fact the first image of the principal concept, where you see the 4 apartment buildings standing on the elevated level, deck level, and with the backbone building where people only live at this side, at the west side. how does it work with the noise? Because we had the wall, but the wall stops at the border of our own project, and still noise is coming in. This is one of the reasons to choose these specific forms. We made all kinds of computer analysis models, and we found out, which is pretty logical, I guess, but we found out that it's necessary to avoid parallel planes. And if you want to avoid parallel planes, because in between parallel planes you can have a noise that bounces there and back, and you get echoes, etc. So we were making all these round forms, and we put it in the computer as long as possible. And on hardly any place it's necessary to create more than just this to keep the noise out. There are a few. Later I'll show you how we organized the fences, the glass fences of the balconies. And at this point here, of course, it's pretty close to the A10. We heightened them up to a full height of the elevation to keep the noise out. For every house, on every level, we had to prove it with computer models for the municipality of Amsterdam, because it simply didn't believe that we could achieve the goal without making real high glass walls and to keep the noise out. And we didn't want to make these glass walls. Firstly, they're very expensive, but primarily, I think, because we are looking for social contact between the houses and the people walking in the street and people walking in the gardens. The social context is very important. So if you put people in an aquarium, they will not have contact at all. So this is one of the reasons to adjust the forms so we could tackle the noise. And you see it so different ways. At the side of the highway is pretty close. Then we have the side of the Bos en Lommer, where we are obliged to create vivid facade as well. There we have a sort of glass houses between the houses and the streets. And this is a rather expensive facade compared to the rest of the program. But so now if you go there at night, you see lights burning and people sitting there. And then the inside is really friendly and open. So the compactness of the blocks led to a low energy loss and this high performance coefficient. But now about these forms again, I was telling you that people were really anxious what we were going to do, and it's so different than the rest of the morphology, because that's what you see here. Is it appropriate? So there were, let's say, two directions within the municipality. Some thought it's really crazy what they're doing. We're not okay with it. While others really thought it's exactly the solution. And the way that we could get it over and get people over to agree with it was because we could show them how good we were looking at the actual environment. To start with, the Colokit Church, the form. Nobody said this was an ugly form there. No, it's the end of it's the borderline effect of the whole neighborhood. So in fact, we took it over and translated it. At the same time, we took over the material and the color of the church, the red brick, which is the basis of the whole program and where we put these white blocks on. Then opposite of our block, you have this street block at the Jan van Schaffelaarplantsoen, and it has this character. And we took over the detailing of the red brick and the white concrete bands in our program. And finally, at this side, at the north side, our neighbor is, as it's called, the Pingelmeewoning, which is sort of, well, what was a very small person called? Well, never mind. There are really small houses. And we took over the scale of the small houses in the basement of our building. So on the one hand, there's a really strong intervention that we do, but on the other hand, in fact, it listens to the environment. And in fact, if you look at a tapestry, it always has an end. And this is the end of the tapestry of Van Eester. That was how we sold it. Here you see floor plans. I'm not going over all floor plans, of course, but to make it a little bit understandable how this works. At the top side, this is the A10 highway side. You see the housing strictly one-sided towards the park, the west side. And where they touch the brick wall, they have these little windows that are dimensioned so that there's no sound at all from the highway. And then you see here the plectrum formed apartment buildings with an extremely high good netto brutto dimension, because this kind of building is relatively expensive and we had to build for normal budget. So where we spend the budget, we have to earn it somewhere else. And if you look between your eyes, you see that in fact it's an orthogonal structure and with twice a 45-degree turn, that's all. And the construction is really orthogonal of every building. And what you do in fact is take a big saw and you saw it like this. And it is as simple as I tell it. So these forms are reachable. The only difficult thing is the facade. And if you want to make round facades, it's always expensive. So these facades are not really round. They are faceted, as I call it. But we used a few tricks to make people think it's round. I'll show you later. This is in fact the belly of the building that you never see unless you want to park your car, because this is on street level. And on street level, we have all kinds of friendly provisions like the double height housing in the basement of the block, but they have these facades on this side. Here are little enterprises, and this is where you go up into the plan. We had to store one-on-one parking with the housing, which is crazy because this is a location that is perfectly connected to the center of Amsterdam by tram and bus. So why should you make one-on-one? And the proof is here. It's, I think 50% is in use. So it's still a problem getting a right parking quotation from municipalities. Here you see the belly button of the building. So this is what's happening underneath, where you only come when you park your car. And as soon as you get up, oh, here we have some technical sections. But now we go in the plan. You recognize again the color of the brick of the church, and of the house is the opposite side. This is the 4.5 meter that refers to the small housing over there. And these are the superponed blocks in white concrete bands, like at the other side of this picture. So this way it stands out, but and it fits in both. That's the idea. And it's really, we think, and that you really should go there. It's inviting. You want to go there and be there on the deck. This is when we come up the deck. The deck has several levels because 5 meters is a lot to climb at once for many people. So we do it in 2 levels, creating thus an outdoor auditorium for people of the neighborhood, which is really used quite a lot for music and storytelling, etc. And then we go a little bit higher, and we are on the top of the deck, which is on the level of the exit of the highway. And there we see the green, the plants, the trees, and a little greenhouse, the meeting place for neighborhood residents. So not only for the people living here, but for everybody. And even you and I coming to, if you visit the Netherlands, you go there, you can sit there and make coffee and buy coleslaw if you want, because that's another thing that's happening over there. What you see here is another thing of the housing blocks. It's super important when you want to make something like this that you control the social control. And you can do this really quietly by making all-sided building blocks. You see housing or living rooms at all sides. And so there are no secret hideaways here. And go there, it has been there now for 1.5 years in one of the worst used to be one of the worst neighborhoods of the Netherlands. Nothing is broken, everything is tidy, it works. Specifically important, we take away almost 1 hectare of ground from the city, which was really useful for the water to get away. So if you build a really hard program, we calculated that the sewage would explode in the streets. So it's simply not possible to get to bring your water away instantly. That's why this whole project is one big sponge. Of course, you see the water here, but where you walk on, it's 50 centimeters of substrate, which can absorb enormous amounts of water and give it back to the plants. So it has been a year now, or 1.5 years, and the plants didn't need any extra water. It waters itself with its own provisions, like the little bassin here. These bassins have another function as well. Normally spoken, apartments built on the lowest level, nobody wants to live there because you're afraid that people break in or whatever, or that the dog of your neighbor walks in your house. By doing this, you create a distance, and by creating the distance, you bring the relationship. So that's the paradox. People sit right now really a lot on these low positioned balconies here. Oh, and right now here I can point out the only point where we had to make the glass walls a little higher to keep the noise out. But for the rest, you see everywhere the glass until halfway. Because that's something else. We control the noise without, let's say, defensive measures, and it made it possible for us to make transparent railings. So me standing there in the middle of the picture, I can look down and see what's happening in the street. And if you walk there, you see people yelling to each other, "Hi, how are you?" Because they see each other. And if you see each other, you have contact. And then, of course, there's lots of green and water to absorb noise, and of course, also the traffic dust, which is a big problem in many cities. Then we had to reach this extremely high energy goal. And apart from the compactness of the blocks, which bring low energy loss, we added a lot of PV cells on the roofs. And this is the whole diagram of this building, which has an EPC. So that's an energy delivery coefficient below 0, meaning that netto, this building brings energy and doesn't cost energy. This is, at the moment, the most energy efficient housing block of the Netherlands. Another thing that's really important as sustainability in talking about new demands is that you have to extend the life cycle of a building as long as possible. And it means simply that you need to be able to adapt it relatively simple. So this structure is not fixed. It was possible during the development, but it's still possible in the coming years to change the program in bigger houses or in smaller houses without large investments. So this is for a real estate investor a real, this creates a lot of value because after 50 years, it's still valuable. You can easily change it to new demands. Let me now take you on the topic of the design solutions and the new demands shortly towards another project, which is on Eiburg. And this is called Kavel 14, and Kavel 14 is on an island near Eiburg. It was on this location here. And right now I'm here. We are on Eiburg as well. So this is one of the new islands around Amsterdam. And this is a part of a large housing block. Again, we had noise problems there because there's a heavily trafficked road in front of this. And we wanted to make a real Amsterdam block here. That was what the municipality wanted. And At this site, this specific solution that I want to show you is that we use reused greenhouses to reduce the noise from the facade and to bring a real energy efficient solution. But that is not the main thing about it. I think, well, this is the image. Oh yeah, I can point out here something that I will address later. A large common space for the residents in the building. But this is what I really wanted to show you. In fact, this is the conversion of the traditional Amsterdam block, which is, it has these measures as well, like you find everywhere in Amsterdam. But what we did is simply shift the volumes of the block and create stacked gardens on every level. Of course, this means in a really specific section here. But as we experienced during Corona times, people here were obliged to sit at home for months. It got crazy because they only had a small balcony to sit on. We think we should think of all kinds of topologies where you can make real gardens on the higher levels. And this is one of the first projects to do that. This is what it shows from the inside. And this project is about much more because there's a whole social component to it as well. This is meant to be, we're about 100, potential 100 residential units, but we have common spaces for the social binding in the block. And the building is completely circular in its building topology. Again, the energy is really low, the energy question. But I want to stress right now here the living quality that you can bring by thinking, overthinking, rethinking old typologies. And I think this is really a revolution for the Amsterdam block. Oh, I wanted to point out here at the top again, we're really fond of greenhouses, as you can see. We put a greenhouse on top of it, and next to it, a common urban garden for everybody of the block. And this is what it looks like when you're sitting in. And this could be the place where you work if you work at home and don't want to work in home. Cavo 14 has a much deeper circularity concept than Rhapsody has. So it is about the material and the products reusing, not reusable materials, but reused materials, which is really a difference. But also about the circularity of social communities. So what we tried to facilitate is developments in the group itself. So that make people possible to stay even if they get older, for example. And therefore we needed a concept of common spaces. This is an oversight of the same block with all the common spaces. The orange are the internal common spaces. The green is the external common spaces. For example, the kindergarten here where you just saw the little image of, and of course here the greenhouse with this urban garden on the roof. What we did is create a concrete structure which enables us to bring in all kinds of different typologies now and in the future. So it has to be a flexible structure. So we can work on a mix of group and individual housing. We can make smaller and larger houses together, and we can mix mid-sized houses. We can do everything, and this is the section that leads to it. But it's, of course, not only the section, it is the concrete structure as well. And as building is expensive, you have to be creative. And what we did here is in the blue zones, we have removable flexible floors. Here are all the installations concentrated. If you change the layout of a floor, you have to change the installations, but you can do it because you can reach them in a relatively simple way. And apart from that, this what is designed as a concrete structure of reused concrete, thus reducing the CO2 production with more than 60%. And it is a structure that can be demolished relatively simple in the future. So there are many sides to this. This is not a project where we experienced with this kind of thinking. It's 10 years old right now, Crystal Court in Buitenveldert. And again, we have stacked gardens. These are 40 stacked houses. And we enclose our green space at the inside. This is another relationship between the building and the green. So the green in the building is really in the building here with the water. Again, the water used as privacy buffer. And below the water, what you see here, this green park, is the parking solved. And this is the structure as we made it there. We have concrete vertical slabs because all these enormous cantilevers are relatively difficult to make. So we prefabricated the concrete slabs to enable these cantilevers, and we needed really lightweight floors. So we brought in hollow floors, which enables us to have the same flexibility that I was talking about. So a few years ago, one guy bought a house and put a jacuzzi in his living room. Might be a crazy idea, but it was possible. So, and we have, in this 10 years, we've seen houses connected, and we have seen houses divided. So it's a living structure. And this makes it, again, this expands the lifestyle of the life cycle. And this is our newest baby we're working on in Alkmaar. A freestanding object within a high-dense to-be-built neighborhood, close or directly against Alkmaar. And again, here we are experimenting with gardens for apartments on every level. Here you see a sketch. We are in the preliminary design phase, so we make a lot of hand sketches as well. Okay, so much for the new demands, and for the design solutions, I want to talk a little bit about the power to the people. So the social inclusion. If Nathan thinks we can continue, please thumbs up, then I will. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the involvement of neighborhood and local stakeholders, which is a relatively complex issue. And you always have to find a balance between two extremes. Top down is what we usually do. We design a building, throw it out of an airplane, and there it is. And nobody has to say anything about it. That's not the right way, I guess. And we are getting real problems with it in the Netherlands right now because we have strong procedures and people know to find the legal ways. But strictly bottom up is impossible because bigger developments need to function in the texture of the city. So you cannot look at from completely down to up. So we need a balance between the extremes. And I think in social inclusion and equality, there lies the key. And again, I'm going back to Rhapsody because here's a story about this. When we started in 2014 with this project, the Kolekit neighborhood was officially denounced the most infamous neighborhood of the Netherlands. It's really bad. It was dangerous. I know in the United States, from my own experience, there are a few of these neighborhoods as well. I've been in Berry Farm, for example, in Washington, D.C. Not the nicest place to be, but they are there and you have to deal with it. But because the city is boiling over with new developments, suddenly the other side of the A10 highway got interesting for developers and the municipality. So that's the real reason why this development started, not because they want to be friendly for the neighbors. And in a short amount of time, this is a building sign that has been standing there for a few years, but in a short amount of time, the whole Kolekit neighborhood was in the planning of construction. So if you do an intervention like this in a neighborhood, you better take in the local stakeholders, or you create your own opposition. If it's not by heart, you have to do it by your intelligence, because you really get problems. But okay, we do it by heart, and we wanted to find out how can we reach the local residents at all, because 80% of these of people were non-native Dutch people, not knowing our language, etc. That's really difficult to get to, but we were lucky here, because in the co-located neighborhood we had some existing social structure. A art collective, Cascoland, has been there for a few years, and they functioned as a binding factor between all the people. So they created an urban garden between a few blocks. They had an annual barbecue for all the residents of the neighborhood, and there were really beloved people there in the neighborhood. So this was the first step to take to team up with these guys. So at the left you see Roel, he's Cascoland, and in the middle you see Sanne, and Sanne is urban process manager, so she was from my side of the team. But Roel really got us to meet the real people, to listen to them, to get us into the neighborhood. An important footnote here: you really have to invest to get into a neighborhood like this. After this, we went looking for a party that could be our client. So this is exactly the other way around. So we looked for a client that was willing to do it the way we thought it should be done. So the developer and builder, Smits de Nijs, stepped into this process. And in the meantime, the municipality of Amsterdam got really enthusiastic about this approach. So Tangram and Urban Sync is the urban producers, were the first to start the whole process with the neighborhood residents. And then, together with our developer, we had to find a real estate investor, because the municipality was only willing to make steps if we had an end user, which was to be CBRE global investors, an Anglo-Saxon really big organization who just started in the Netherlands and wanted to profile themselves as one of the most sustainable real estate investors. That's exactly the reason why they decided to pick up this challenge. And we sat as equals on the table, really. So we sat in little meeting rooms. So the investor, the gemeente, the municipality, everybody had the same position on the table. This is one of these evenings that we were talking about. And what are you talking about then? Of course, not about the design, because that's something for professionals. Now we're talking about the program and about the atmosphere that we were going to make there. And that was exactly the room that we could give them. We were pretty clear about it beforehand, because if you buy the wrong stuff, if you sell the wrong stuff, nobody will support you later on if they find out that they have been tricked. So you have to be really honest. But this has been a process of two more years, getting guys into the whole thing. And as a result, this became their development. So instead of it was an enemy, the developer and the architect, it became one of them. This is not, of course, it happens in the Netherlands, but the way we did it here is not so normal. It was even so exemplary that our king, you see him here right there, King Willem there, came to visit to hear what's going on here. It was a surprise visit. This is the mayor of Amsterdam, was it by then, Van Aerts. Here's Roel sitting, explaining what we were doing. But of course, this is not about philanthropy or whatever. All these things come with a price, of course. If you take away from the neighborhood a few acres of land, you have to give something back. And we had to promise, or CBRE had to promise to give back amenities within the new block. So if you see what was given into return, this is the project, of course. I was talking about the greenhouse there. This is the center of the project where activities take place. Then we build a little guest house. I told you, 80% of people come from abroad, from Morocco, Tunisia, Turkey. and they live in really small houses further in the neighborhood. Here they can rent for $10 a day a house for their parents when they get over to visit here, because their houses are too small to give them an extra bed. Then this part was supposed to be a shop there at the busy Bossenlommerweg. CBRE decided to give it away to the neighborhood, and it's named the Villy. It's just opened. It's a coffee corner where you can buy coffee for a quarter. They do cooking courses, homework assistant. They have a tools library, etc. Everything for the neighborhood. Then there's a caretaker's house, and in general, we have 5 community managers, people who were born there. This is Fuad Lakbier. He's the head of the community managers. They take care that everything goes well, and in return, they pay a little less rent, and they do a lot of programming. And the programming takes place here in the greenhouse, but they do all kinds of activities with the people from the block itself and from the rest of the neighborhood. This is creating a community, and this is the only way to fit a big project like this in a neighborhood that already exists. So this is the atmosphere that we have right now. I'm standing here in the greenhouse. You see these plants there. One of the community managers takes care of it. And if we go there and we pay $1, we can take out the plant and eat it at night. For example, all kinds of herbs they're doing there. But there is this meeting table there. We can make coffee and tea. So it's a real center, and people use it really good. So we're talking about bringing people in, and this brings stewardship to a project like this in a supposed to be problematic neighborhood. And what we think is what we love, we maintain, we will not demolish. And right now, I can say after 1.5 years, it works. The maintenance by CBRE is perfect, so the buildings stay clean. If something gets broken, they repair it immediately. But the social impact of this block is enormous on the neighborhood. So let me take you for a short detour again, if I may, Nathan, to a little bit theory on the question, could it be possible to upscale this kind of participation to the level of the city planning? That's a difficult one. And in the Cities of the Future, the book that we contributed at, we researched this question. Again, a research by design. And I do a little bit theory, because planning is, let's say that about the sustainable planning is on the sustainable triangle, which is partly physical, partly economical, and social cultural. If you forget one of the three, you're not working, you're not doing the right thing. This indicates that you need a lot of experts to do urban planning in a right way. You need on design, mobility, climate, energy, livability, behavior, economy, philosophy, development, even more. So it's not by chance that I illustrated with the Tower of Babylon. It's really difficult to get all these people on one line, because they tend to have difficulties communicating with each other, I noticed during the last years. Why is it necessary at all to think about new strategies in planning? I think we've done enough of planning based on gut feelings, opinions, personal relationships. They are biased and subjective, and these playing balls, they're not coincidental here. I think this is a way that matches no longer with where we are with our society. We have enormous amounts of data available every day. It's piling up. We should use what we know. And like I stated before, we should introduce the bottom-up empowerment in our planning. And how can you integrate it in your planning process? Well, that needs another triangle. And this is, let's say, the basis, the approach triangle, which is based on data. Everything starts with data, policies, and design. To get from data to policy, you have filters, ideology, values. To get from policy to design, policy will bring a program of demands. To design, there is a subjectiveness to it. And then you have to check the design in the data again, in a data engine that is, to bring it back to objectivity. In fact, if you look at it, this is a iterative process. So right now, at this moment, planning of bigger urban plans, of master plans, is a linear process. I'm talking about a iterative process right here, because you're starting with something with all kinds of data. Via your ethics, you come to a policy. This is really political as well, what I'm saying right now. And then we are going to translate it into design. But we have to check if we did it well. And if we didn't meet all demands, if we didn't reach the goals, we have to do it again. And by doing this again and again, you can reach a better result. But you have to be aware that this is a iterative process throughout the years as well, because the planning for 3 billion people, we will not do it in a year. So you have to rethink it over and over. And I think there's something to say about big data, because many people are afraid of it, but you cannot avoid it anymore. But we have to realize that it's not objective and value free. Instead, in a way, the whole city is a social, economical, and political structure which is directed by values. And values is what it is about, because that's not the truth. It's what we think and what we want and what we feel. And we have to accept it, and we have to be able to integrate it in our strategy systems. I was talking about the different transitions that we're heading for, but it's not only that we have to look at the transition, we have to make choices how we will do the transition. Will we do it in phases and baby steps, or do we do it quickly, like the Chinese built Shenzhen in 10 years? Do we do it from a collective point of view, the central government, or do we do it from the smallest unit possible, let's say the bottom up? Somewhere in the middle lies the truth, and it can be at every position in this cross. So how can you make democratic choices on all these issues, and in the end come back to urban design, because that's the alternative goal. And that's not all. The world became more complex. We used to have the market and the government. This is maybe a little bit Dutch, what I say right now, but the world used to be a little bit simpler. Right now, there are many more players on the table. And if I'm referring to the neighborhood and other local stakeholders, we have all these difficult transitions. We have the daily social system where we have to react on in our planning. How on earth are you going to bring in non-professionals in this kind of complexity? And that's the big question. And if we can solve it, we can bring democracy into our process. What we did, and people who are interested better read it in the book. What we did is designing an urban transition game. And in fact, what it does is breaking complex questions into smaller pieces, and thus enabling people to give answers on issues that they are able to talk about. If you ask somebody, are you against climate change? Everybody will say yes, but you know nothing. So you have to address it differently. And so we designed a playing board, deliberately analog, so all the people were able to do it. We tried it out on real people, on a real cases of 1 square kilometer in the center of Eindhoven. And of course, this was a tryout, this was a field lab, whatever you call it, but it appeared to work. So this is the playing board, and I will not go into it too deep, of course not. But it's really an interesting way to get all people on the table. And the funny thing is that in the beginning they were sort of skeptical. What do you want us to do? But in the end, people wanted to continue and saying, "Oh, no, we're not ready yet. We have to think of it. We have to think it over, or whatever." And the end goal, of course, is to achieve a agreement on several issues. So, in fact, what we call in the Netherlands a coalition agreement. That's what we use in politics as well. This coalition agreement can be the basis of the program of demands for the very specific site that you're dealing with at the moment. What you in fact do is bringing people or their inclusion not in the design phase, but you bring it in the phase of the policy making. And that's where it should be, because from there on you can make a better program of demands. So what we did, and I'm going not going to elaborate on this any further, but we translated the outcome of the coalition agreement and we tested it on a design. Well, it doesn't work, maybe because of the internet. It's a little movie, but in the end we elaborated the design to show it's really an enormous project of 3 million square meters. But just to show Eindhoven that there could be an outcome of all of this. But the basic was that we were looking for a flexible urban grid that can change over the years. Okay, maybe this is a bit far off for you all students, but on the other hand, I think if you want to do good work on these issues, you need to have an opinion on this. So you better get yourself deep in this kind of questions. Right, and now I'm coming back to, let's say, a little bit easier, and it's the last part, it's a short part, and it's this hobby horse of mine, the principle of MA. So the integration of the buildings in their internal public space, that gets really interesting when the city is getting denser. And I start with a third philosopher, which is Lao Tse. So it's pretty old, it's nothing new that I say. And he says, walls with windows and doors from the house form the house, but the empty space in it is the essence. And that's exactly what the architecture is about. It's not about a nice brick wall, it's about the spaces you make and the light that falls between it, etc. So the Japanese even have a sign for it. This is Ma. And Ma is something that is not created by compositional elements, but it takes place in your imagination. And it was originally brought in music and in theater. So in music, sometimes you have music going up and getting really strong, and suddenly it falls down and then it goes ahead. And the little space between these two extremes is what is called Ma, because you feel the tense between the two. And the same as in the theater, when two actors take a short break between two spoken sentences, it can have a lot of tension. That is the Ma. We see it in art as well. In older art, on the left, this big church is about the empty space of the church. That's what you really see, not the detail of the column. And in modern art, like in the one of Jean Arp, it's emptiness. Emptiness is a limited space. It's literally the title of it. So it's not about circle. It's about what's in here. So how can we translate this idea, this notion of Ma towards urban design? Well, if you look at morphology drawings of cities, you already get a feeling what's going on there. So the Marzahn is something completely different than the old city of Aleppo or Amsterdam. You feel the difference only by looking at it. But these are, in fact, simplified morphologic drawings, because the real one is the one of Giambattista Nolli, and it's pretty old, 1748. And he really understood what he was drawing, because he doesn't draw the buildings, he draws the spaces between the buildings, and he includes the public spaces within the buildings. And this is the center of Rome. I hope many of you have been there already, and otherwise you should go there. And this is specifically the Pantheon. This is a space where everybody walks in and out to experience something. This is the dome. But of course, it's not about the building. It's about what's happening in the building. Okay, these are all tourists. Might not be the best example, but everybody of us knows the little plazas, the pocket parks where people meet each other, because there is a tension in space and it tempts you to go there. Well, in all our buildings, we're looking for a translation of Ma. Like in Crystal Court, we have the continuity of space. Between these stacked blocks, there's really a heavy tension that you feel you are inside, but on the other side, you're outside. And in this space in between, people meet each other. They have dinners at Christmas, etc. So they feel this is a common place, but it's not in the house, it's next to the house. In below the arena offices, which was a really heavily programmed site, we sort of broke to one piece of rock, and the place that was left in the middle, there you feel real heavy tension, but it is as if they fit to each other again. And walking there, you feel the tension between the two blocks. In a project in Utrecht, we call it the explicit intersection, because it's really a full program block, and there are small streets that carved out, and walking there you experience every moment you experience the closed spaces, and then suddenly you look through a corridor towards the larger urban space. So these contrasts are really interesting. In our Eiburg block 29, we were caring about the transition zones between the houses and the semi-public spaces in between. And we designed it so, as you can see here, that people feel that they can go and sit there, put a table and eat there. It is the street, but it feels like it belongs to you. This is all what Ma is about. And this brings me back to, finally, to Rhapsody, because of course there is a real strong Ma in there as well, and it has to be on the elevated park level. So I walk up, and you see here the floor plan, and in fact we have three different Ma spaces. They have a difference in how public they are. In the street, I told you, in this old plan of Van Eester, there were hardly any places to sit. There's place enough, but there's not a place where you want to sit. So this little street plaza that we created here functions pretty well. It's the one that you see here. Then going up and over the bridge here, this is a semi-public terrace belonging to the Villi. So this is where people come and go and walk along. And then we have the more quiet greenhouse field. And that is really where people tend to sit. You see the forms here. And the Ma is, the emotion of Ma here is, as we call it, gentle embrace. So you don't feel strangled or whatever. It flows, the space flows, but still it's there. And here you feel you are somewhere, but you can get away as well. And this is how it is used at the moment. And it really works. So the space between your built artifacts and between yours and those of the neighbors, that's part of the design question that we have to solve as future designers. So I end. I was talking about specific design solutions for unsuitable sites, new demands that we have to meet, of involvement of neighborhood and local stakeholders, so social inclusion, and finally about the integration of buildings and their public space, the principle of Ma. I would say discover your own future focus, and I want to thank you for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bart. And while the audience warms up and thinks of some questions and comments for you all, I just want to say it was a wonderful presentation, and it's really delightful to hear you present your work in the way that you have. I'm really struck by how your presentation was constantly in reference to the social perspective as far as what we do as designers, and understanding our environments and their relationship to human behavior is really so key. And while there's an appreciation for beauty that you mentioned, I also appreciate you mentioning, directly and I think is fundamental as well. The work just really reflects a deep interest and a kind of a connection to human people, which is wonderful. Even in framing sustainability, you talked about flexibility and allowing living structure to expand and extend a life cycle, and the idea that what we love, we will not demolish. Those are human, frames for sustainability, not so much the bricks and mortar version of it, which is really fantastic and for our students to hear. And I think, the way you're presenting your work makes me wonder if you would be willing to speculate with us a bit about how you see the education of our young architects today. What skills and values, should we be focused on teaching our students to be kind of effective contributors in our contemporary world?
Yes, we were reflecting on it a little bit beforehand. I was starting with, it's rather comprehensive stuff, what we're doing here. And but at the same time, I think it's the responsibility of designers to act like you understand that it's comprehensive stuff. So it starts with knowing what you don't know, because we don't know everything, of course. We don't do it alone. We are looking for suitable advisors at the right moment to help us. For example, I would never have been able to create a contact with the neighborhood residents because they see me as an alien. So we needed another way, and we needed other people. But to be able to pose the right question, you have to be interested in it at the first place. And there has been a time, I'm not sure right now, and I certainly don't know how it works at the Roger Williams at the moment, but there has been a time that people were more interested in the conceptualism because of the nice images and the pictures you could create with it. And I think, of course, it has to be good looking. The looks have to be good, but it is about something else. So what the educational facilities should bring in as much as possible is to show all sides. And when there are projects, real design projects, for example, to come up with design questions to the students that challenge them to give this kind of answers. And I know I teach at the moment at the academy. I have a master there. I have a lot of contact. I do lectures every once in a while at TU Delft. And sometimes I sense a lack of urgency to dive in deep enough. And I'm not going to sound like an old guy who knows it all, but that's really my message. Get an opinion on everything. You need an opinion, otherwise you cannot design for people. And there are wrong opinions. You have been victims of wrong opinions the past 4 years. Luckily, that's a little bit better right now. But you're entitled to your own opinion as long as you're able to translate it into designs in a human way. But I think this new strategies ask for a complete new approach, which is more multidisciplinary. And that's something that I would advise to all kinds of educational facilities. Find the connection with other important facilities or faculties to bring in this multidisciplinarity, which is necessary to do this kind of work.
Great. So that's perfect. Yeah. So there's a number of questions that I can pose to you now. So I'll start with a comment from Edgar Adams. It says, greeting to Bart and Charlotte, comprehensive presentation of some very impressive new work. Your commitment to innovative urban solutions with a humane focus on sustainability and community is always inspiring. And now a question from our student Brenna Whitney. She says, thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. I was curious what your views are on social housing. Here in the US, we have a complicated relationship with providing social housing, but I know that in the Netherlands, you have a pretty different view.
Yeah, we have, well, yeah, we have our own view, and I think it's typical Dutch here, and it has good sides and maybe less good sides. For example, at this moment in Amsterdam, we're obliged on some really high-profile locations, like the Southern Axis. It's the highest profile sites in Amsterdam, to build 40-40-20, which means 40% social, 20% mid-size. Mid-price rent, which is Rhapsody as well, and 20% free sector. Well, there is a problem for the feasibility here, and I think the municipalities have to think really carefully how they can do it, because this makes developments impossible at all. But I'm really fond of social housing. In fact, all our earlier work was for like we have corporations who do social housing. And that is where we learned to spend every dollar 5 times. And oh, there's something happening with our. Are we still there, Nathan?
Yeah, you're still there. I just took off the share screen so we can see you a little better.
Oh, okay. You still see me because I don't see you. But
yes. Yeah. No, we still see you.
Okay, that's okay. Social housing, yes, it's really important. When we were working at Berry Farm 6 or 7 years ago, we were trying to bring the concept in at the other side of the ocean, but it really failed after the mayor Vincent Gray got away, and Miriam Bowser came. So that's something that we had to learn, that it's different from here, that the government, how do you say it, continuity is different in the United States and in the Netherlands. So that makes it here relatively more simple to make more complex and longer lasting developments. I experienced in Washington, D.C., that a development that has been underway for 3 years can be thrown away after a new election. And that's really a problem if you want to make good interventions in the city, because they always last longer. So, but back to social housing, yeah, I think it's a necessity to elevate the level of housing for people that have the lowest incomes, and still create good architecture. And I think that's what the Dutch are good at, because we always had relatively high quality social housing, and we should be going on with it. One more remark: it can be a good thing to mix these categories, because then you could write some of the dollars over from the one category to the other and create an average level that's higher than it would have been when you separate the social housing.
Great. So our next question is from our colleague Julian Bonder. He says, thanks so much for this powerful lecture and for the work itself that serves as a model for thinking and making. Could you expand on 3 points as you see it? The first is ethics, understood as a relation with the face of the other. Politics, how do you envision architects' potential to engage with society? And time, as you spoke of Ma so eloquently, the dimension of your work suggests that life, the flow of time as at the center of your work. And then ends with a thank you.
Let me start with the latter, time. Our developments go so fast that we hardly know in what position we will be in 5 years' time. So if you make a fixed urban plans, you're not doing the right thing. What we have to do is to give uncertainty a controlled place. And that's a new dimension in planning. So the planning has to be designed in itself to be flexible. And this is something that we haven't achieved in the Netherlands yet. And I think nowhere in the world, because you always see master plans, even here. So we have to be able, so the time factor you can integrate in your buildings relatively simple, well, okay, but I showed how some ways you can do it. The problem is there's always a little bit more costs. But the thing is here that we know enough about costs and revenues to be able to bring our clients so far that they understand that in the end of the day, they have created more value for the same money. So let's say it's 10% more costs, but at the end of the day, they have 30% more revenues, and that's the moment that they say we do it. This is the way we work all the time. So if I cannot give an advice to potential and newcoming architects, see you know something about not only costs of the building itself, but about the whole life cycle cost of what buildings are about, because that's the way developers think, and you have to speak the developer language to be able to do something better than he thought of. So this was a detour, but on flexibility, costs more, but it brings more and more. And in the buildings, it's not so complex, but it's super important because sustainability, 50% of all energy that's involved with the building in its lifetime is about the building itself. So in fact, demolishing a building is an environmental disaster. So let's start with making structures that can last much longer. That's the first big leap in sustainability. But that's the time factor in your own buildings. But the time factor on urban planning is what I was saying, and that's what we need is iterative strategies for. And that's, well, a little bit too comprehensive to go into deeper right now, but I would like to do it in another moment, in another lecture for you. Then ethics and politics. Well, these are difficult questions because these are subjective, of course. So we have to live with the fact that there are things that we cannot handle, like you getting a president that you don't like, or us not having a government in the coming months because we have a really difficult outcome of our elections, while there's a big urgency to make big steps in planning, and nothing's happening in the coming months. So politics is really difficult, and it can how can I say it, hold up things that you need. So you have to find the right ways, and that's to find the people in instances that will be continuous on their position. So the vice president or whatever, he will leave after 4 years. So that's not the guy you need. You need the top of the municipality departments to get with you. Or in KSU in the Netherlands, I'm teaming up with several directors of our metropolitan areas. We have an Amsterdam metropolitan area, 43 municipalities. We have a Rotterdam metropolitan areas, 36 or something, and we have Utrecht. So you're covering large part of the Netherlands as regions while teaming up with these guys, and these guys will be there for longer. And we take them in for our ideas and try to get them to translate it into real action for example, when parts of a city get developed. So you have to look at a little bit lower level in the politics to get your things done. But you need these contexts to really, or the context to act on this level. Otherwise, it will not work out. Ethics, yeah, everybody has his own ethics. Could be religious or just humane. As long as you have ethics, I would say, and as long as it emphasizes the humane side, and that means that I think we're growing towards another kind of economy, not only money driven, but maybe more based on public well-being, and that's something completely different. And then you thinking like that, you need the inclusion of other people that normally do not have any influence at all, and that's let's say, where my ethics lie. But everybody is entitled on his own ethics, of course.
Great. So next comment is from Steve White, our dean. He says, it's more of a comment than a question. He says, one of the great things about Bart and Lot and their work, and knowing them from sometime soon after we were students, is that Bart and Lot have always projected a future focus and believed in the importance of all of our efforts. Our potential / even obligation is to understand, to make difference, to communicate, to build from this, to build this. One of the great things also that perhaps Bart can explain is the meaning of Tangram, the name of the firm.
Of course, Steve knows, but I understand why he asks this. Yeah, a Tangram is, for those who do not know, we had the presentation. It was in the bottom of the presentation. It's a square which is divided in 7 pieces under 45 degrees. It's might be more than 3,000 years old. And there's a story about it, about a king and a guy who put tiles on the wall, and he broke the tiles in 7 pieces. And then the only way he could think of not being executed was by saying that he did it deliberately and call it a new game. And a Tangram is a multiple form, literally. The thing is that if you put you take these 7 parts, and you buy a book of a Tangram, not our Tangram, but about Tangram, you get examples and you don't see exactly where what piece is in, and you have to put the pieces together and to build the form. This is not easy, and it stands for what we are doing, because we're always working with the same variables, like the same steps in your architectural design, preliminary, definite, etc., or always with the same bunch of people, like a client, a municipality, the neighborhood, etc. So these pieces are always the same, but you can make an endless amount of different forms with it. And so it has a complexity. It stands for everything what we're doing as architects and urbanists. So that was the reason. And one more reason, because when we started, we used a red Tangram at the right bottom. And I think you all know, there was one architect from your country that used it. It was Frank Lloyd Wright. So that was an homage to Frank Lloyd Wright.
Thanks. So maybe one more, which is from a student, I think. Thank you for the great presentation. I'm currently doing a master plan project for Eiburg, Amsterdam. Generally speaking, what strategies or alterations would you make to this area? Actually, I'm not sure that's necessarily a student, but anyway.
Yeah. What was the question, Nathan? Sorry.
The question was, generally speaking, what strategies or alterations would you make to Eiburg?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on, does he or she refer to the existing Eiburg or to the new Eiburg extensions? Well, there's a difference, because well, if I'm at Eiburg right now, but what I think about it is everything is a little bit too equal, and there's too much, let's say, the infrastructure is too dominant. It's a relatively simple grid like Manhattan is, but it could have been a little bit more lively, and especially most of the blocks are not accessible for me and you. Our block is accessible for everybody, but not everybody did it, and would have made the urban structure much more interesting than it is right now. If I look at the new island that's coming, where we have this design of Kavel 14, the municipality put much of the stakes on private housing within the blocks. So that is an interesting development, but at the same time, it's kind of crazy. I could show you a photo right now when blocks are sort of halfway, and like teeth stand, like when you miss half of the teeth in your mouth. That's the image right now. And I don't quite understand why this is a clever way of building. Now, in fact, it's a really stupid way of building because you double all the structures. So I would never follow that again. If you want to give people the opportunity to build their houses in high density, you have to give them the opportunity to do it in a structure that fits in the urban design, and then give them the freedom to fill it in with whatever they want, instead of let them build their separate houses. But unfortunately, I don't know exactly where this student is pointing at, but I am relatively critical on Eiburg. Yeah.
Great. Well, so we've gone a little past what we normally do, but I wanted to suggest something that we don't normally do, but given your social focus, I wondered, and since you know many of the people who have attended today, I wondered if anybody that is willing to or wants to say hi to Bart in person, I can move you to having your video on. So if you hang out and you're not in your pajamas and want to be on screen and say hi to Bart, I'll move you over into allowing video, and we'll stop recording. But before I do that, just want to say again a very big thank you for your presentation and for all of your answers and wonderful spirit of your work and the work itself. Thank you, Bart, very much.
Thank you, Nathan. And I cannot stress enough that I would love to come back there as soon as possible again, Corona-wise, if you know what I mean, to say hello to you in person again.
Wonderful. We can't wait. We're in the same boat. Okay, I'll stop recording.